All right, what's going on, everybody? A very happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. You could be listening in on FMAM dial KSHP, on the Occupy Democrats Network, the Washington Press Network, TikTok, X, YouTube, you name it, we're on it, and we appreciate you being a part of the show. Also, on my website, check it out, pushingthelimits.live. Again, pushingthelimits.live, where you can support what we do on there. We got some great merchandise up there, donations accepted, and you can sign up free for our newsletter. Big show lined up for you today. Chief Judge Cynthia Cruz is going to be joining us in studio. I know she's going to have a lot of opinions on a lot of different issues facing this country, including attacks on our democracy, attacks on judges. We're going to get her thoughts on all that. A very experienced judge joining us in studio. I'm going to be breaking down Joe Biden's speech a little bit today and the positives and the negatives. But before I do that, I say to the Democrat Party, what are you doing? President Joe Biden has said repeatedly over the course of the last week that he's not going anywhere, that he's staying in this race. Yet House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries, we are learning today, did not offer his endorsement, according to sources, in a meeting last night. More than a dozen Democratic House members and at least one Democratic senator have publicly called on President Joe Biden to withdraw from his reelection campaign. Nancy Pelosi saying that Joe Biden has not made a final decision. Could you have more mixed messages within the Democratic Party right now? I just put out a video on social media, and I'm going to say the same thing right now. If, in fact, Joe Biden is the guy, then the Democrat Party needs to unite, and the Democrat Party needs to come together, whether you're in favor of him staying in this thing or not. You guys need to unite. The division is not helping anybody. And if, in fact, Joe Biden is going to step down, that decision needs to have been made yesterday. What are you waiting for? Every day that goes by that there's more mixed messaging within the Democratic Party, the more votes that you're going to lose. This is about defeating Donald Trump. That's it. Doesn't matter who's running. This is about defeating Donald Trump. I've gone through the list of the reasons why I'm an anti-Trump person. I don't need to go through it again with all of you. What is the Democrat Party doing? The mixed messaging is a disaster 4 months before an election. Get your you-know-what in gear. And if, in fact, and, listen, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but when I said maybe Obama met with the vice president in Vegas, I think I was right. We know that Barack Obama's had calls with Nancy Pelosi over the last few days. We know that for sure. Talking about, boy, would I love to have heard those phone calls. I can't imagine those phone calls were, yep, Joe's our guy. He's staying in there. I can't imagine that's how those phone calls went. Those phone calls were either, we need to put somebody in there to replace Joe, or what do we do about damage control here? What can we do moving forward? That's exactly how those conversations must have gone. And I don't know what's in Barack Obama's head. I don't know what's in Nancy Pelosi's head. I can tell you that if Nancy Pelosi was all in with Joe Biden, she would have said so. She wouldn't have said the other day he hasn't made a final decision yet. I don't know if he's not made a final decision yet. I think it's the Democrat Party that hasn't made a final decision yet, quite frankly. In Joe Biden's head, I believe he's being honest. He wants to be that guy. He believes he has more work to be done. I believe Joe Biden's being honest with the American people. But the Democrat Party is not being honest with everyone. They have to be honest with themselves, and they have to be honest with others. What are they doing? If Joe Biden is the guy, stand by him. If he's not the guy, then make a decision immediately. Every day that goes by is another opportunity lost to get another vote. Now, I will talk about his speech yesterday, and it was very highly anticipated. There were some good moments. There were some not so good moments. And, normally if you screw up somebody's name and you replace it with another, normally it wouldn't be a big deal, especially when you're, in your early 80s. But since the world is watching and there's so much scrutiny on Joe Biden and his wherewithal, if he's competent for another 4 years, you can't really have screw-ups like this. I'm sorry. I'm still voting for the guy if he's the guy. But you can't confuse Donald Trump with our vice president, and this is exactly how the press conference started after his 6 or 7 minute read speech. Have a listen to this.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration.
All right, the fact is that that was a bad blunder. And normally I wouldn't be talking about this, and I would say honest members of the media wouldn't be talking about it if his health and his wherewithal wasn't the topic of discussion. It's a blunder. Is it the end of the world? No, it's not. But when you have your first real press conference in 8 months, probably not a good idea to confuse your vice president with Donald Trump. Now, he was asked about this later on, and here's exactly what Joe Biden said in response to this, because Donald Trump was seething at the bits, mocking Joe Biden for doing this. Here's how this exchange went down.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
Okay, so that a different clip, but that was, again, Joe Biden confusing Vladimir Putin, okay, because that's what happened there, Vladimir Putin with Zelensky. Now, Joe Biden was asked about that confusion and was also asked about the mix-up, and Joe Biden's only response was, well, go ahead and listen to Trump if you want to, in a kind of a sarcastic tone. There were some good moments yesterday where Joe Biden was talking about the threat that Donald Trump is showing to not just the country but the world. Have a listen to this.
Do you think our democracy is under siege based on this court? Do you think democracy is under siege based on Project 2025? Do you think he means what he says when he says he's going to do away with the civil service, eliminate the Department of Education, make sure, I mean, we've never been here before. And that's the other reason why you say, hand off to another generation. I've got to finish this job. I've got to finish this job because there's so much at stake.
Okay, so I partially agree. There is a lot at stake. I agree with Mr. President. I agree with you 150%. I also agree with the president on Trump's threat to democracy and threat to this country. That was a good moment. I agree with that. And I wish Joe Biden would do more of that. I agree. But the part where he was asked about, what if your vice president is polling better? And Joe Biden's response to that was basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said, unless I have 0% chance to win, I'm in this. And that's just the wrong attitude. I'm sorry, Mr. President, I'm very disappointed in your answer there. Because if all the polls are showing that your vice president has a better opportunity, a better chance today to defeat Donald Trump than you do, then you have to take that into account. And it sounds to me that Joe Biden isn't even taking that into account. Take a couple steps back. Have some wherewithal of understanding where we're at here, where you're at. You're not polling as well as your vice president. Does that mean Joe Biden can't win? I'm not ready to say that. I'm certainly more concerned now than I was a few months ago. But we have to land this on the basis of reality, and the reality is telling us, based on the polls, that our vice president is polling much better than Joe Biden is, at least in the latest polls that have just come out. That's important. It's important because, Democrats and anti-Trumpers should have only one goal in mind. No matter who it is, we have to put the best person in that spot to defeat Donald Trump. That is where I stand. And that is where many other Americans, quite frankly, stand as well. Listen, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If Joe Biden's the guy, then he will have my full 100% support. That's not even an afterthought. But is he the right guy? Why did Hakeem Jeffries not endorse Joe Biden yesterday? They met last night, and in a letter to colleagues today, Jeffries said he directly expressed discussions among lawmakers to Biden. And as I mentioned, Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi have spoken privately about the future of the 2024 campaign. Both the former president and ex-speaker expressed concerns about how much harder they think it's become for the president to defeat Donald Trump. And of course, next week we have the Republican National Convention, where the GOP will nominate Trump as its presidential candidate, and that kicks off, of course, in Milwaukee. Now, there are plenty of other Democrats in office right now that have stopped short of calling for Biden to end his campaign, but have either expressed concerns about Biden's chances They've said he'll lose outright or remain publicly undecided. Still, at this time, at least more than 70 members of the House and Senate have publicly reaffirmed their support for Joe Biden. But there's still mixed messaging within the Democrat Party. That's not a good thing. I want to play you some audio. Someone that I certainly have a lot of respect for, and that's Ashley Allison. If you don't know who Ashley Allison is, a paid contributor on CNN. She is a black woman, and she does make a lot of fair, good points. And she is frustrated with those in the Democratic Party that are saying Joe Biden needs to step down. Hear her perspective, because I think it's a really good one.
Joe Biden stays in the race, I'm going to do every single thing I can to defeat Donald Trump, because as a black woman living in this country that has less constitutional rights than I had from the day that I was born 42 years ago, I refuse to live under Donald Trump's reign again. I refuse to risk our democracy. And Joe Biden is the person right now who is able to defeat him. And so when people are saying, do something to prove that you have the command of the knowledge, and you stand up and you call on 10 reporters and you answer 19 questions for 59 minutes, then I ask you, if you go and say step down, then what is the test that he must prove over and over again? Because then it feels like you, as a person who is calling for him to step down, is being disingenuous. Now, I'm not saying it's not wrong, because that debate was terrible, and Joe Biden has acknowledged that. But as people who are living with the fear of a possible dictator to take over this country, I just ask you, as a Democratic Party, and I'm not super excited about Joe Biden, but I am terrified of Donald Trump, to get it together for the people that you are asked to represent. There is too much at stake. And I don't understand what more people need after a night like tonight to say he is the leader of the free world. I sometimes on television say, like, if there go I, but for the grace of God, that I am not held to the mistakes I make sometimes on television in the days of my life. And I'm a little annoyed and I'm furious, because I talk to black people who have saved this country over and over, who helped elect Joe Biden, who saved the Democratic Party time again. And black people are saying, let it go, folks. And yet again, when you look at the people who have called for him to step down, they are not the backbone of the Democratic Party. And
all right, well, here's where I disagree with her. First of all, the Democrat leader of the House, Hakeem Jeffries, refused to endorse him yesterday in a meeting. So she's wrong there. There have been other leaders within the Democrat Party who have been very wishy-washy, including Nancy Pelosi. Even Barack Obama. I know Barack Obama, several weeks back, did a fundraiser with Joe Biden. I get that. But these are huge leaders within the Democrat Party, and they have not shown 100% full support backing for Joe Biden. So I would respectfully disagree with Ashley Allison. Now, she makes some very valid points there, right? And I agree with her. Listen, if Joe Biden's the guy, then the Democrat Party needs to unite, stand behind him. If they believe, and even though I might disagree with them, but if they believe that Joe Biden is their best chance to defeat Donald Trump, then okay. But there's too many Democrats today that are very wishy-washy on this subject. Mixed messaging 4 months before the elections is not a good look. So while I agree with most of what Ashley Allison said, these aren't just hiccups. These aren't just, mixed words or blunders or mistakes. It was a terrible debate. We all could agree on that. Okay? It was a bad performance. We all could agree on that. But here's, again, I heard the excuses, because I think it's kind of an excuse yesterday. Well, I was tired. I'm doing too much. Well, you were what, 8 days at Camp David? I don't understand that excuse. That needs to stop moving forward now. If you need to sleep a little later and you need to go to bed a little earlier, then do whatever it takes, Mr. President. I don't care what you need to do to get yourself right, but go ahead and do it. Listen, he did a good job on policy yesterday. You can disagree with his answers from a policy standpoint, but listen, he has a tremendous amount of knowledge and wherewithal when it comes to answering direct policy questions. There's no question about that. He did a good job with that yesterday, but the messaging and the way he presented it wasn't the best. So I'm just going by what I see, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just trying to be honest with all of you. I can't sit here and tell you right now that Joe Biden is the best pathway to defeat Donald Trump. But if, in fact, the Democrat Party feels that way, then make a damn decision. Stop it with the wishy-washy answers from those that are in the halls of the chambers, and just answer directly. If he's your guy, he's your guy. If he's not your guy, then make a decision. That is all I'm saying. I'm getting very frustrated with the Democrat Party because I don't want them to blow it. I want to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't see the White House ever again for the rest of his life. But every single day that goes by where the answers are still being asked, and there's good reason for it, are votes lost for the Democrat Party. I'm sure they are. I know that the prominent, those that have been in the Democrat Party for a while, they're going to be voting for Joe Biden no matter what. People like me, the anti-Trumpers out there, they're going to be voting for Joe Biden no matter what. But again, we're talking about those that are still in the middle, those that are still on the fence, moderate Republicans, moderates in general. You have to make a decision and stick with it, and you have to do it now. And it doesn't seem like the Democrat Party as a whole knows what to do. I can guarantee you that if the leaders of the party said today, okay, we got to get Joe out of there, then all Barack Obama would need to do is pick up the phone and make a phone call to Joe, and it would happen. Because I do believe Joe is a decent human being. And if Barack Obama made that phone call and said, listen, Joe, we've all decided as a party we appreciate your service, but you need to step down, then he would. That's really all that needs to happen. I don't know if that's going to happen. Joe might continue to be in the race. He might be the guy. I don't know. I have no idea what they're going to do. All I'm simply saying is whatever you're going to do, do it. We're 4 months before the elections. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. I want to tell you guys about my good friends, the official gaming bar of PTL, Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones. Every Tuesday this month, if you show your TAM card, you get $50 in free slot play. Some of the best lunches I've ever had in Las Vegas have been at Jackson's Bar and Grill. Great food, great atmosphere, great people, the official gaming bar of PTL. Please check them out on Flamingo and Jones, Jackson's Bar and Grill. Coming up next, Chief Judge Cynthia Cruz. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP. All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. Programming note, Nicole Mitchell will be joining us a little bit later on in the show. And, it's interesting because I've been doing this radio stuff for 2 decades. Gosh, I've interviewed all sorts of people. I've interviewed from politicians to first ladies to attorneys, all sorts of different celebrities and athletes and prominent figures. I don't think, and I was just going through this in my head, I don't think I've ever interviewed a judge before. So this is the first time, and I'm happy to be doing this. Her name is Chief Judge Cynthia Cruz. She grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, but she's lived in Las Vegas since 1969. Boy, has the city changed since then. She got her doctorate in 2003 from the William S. Boyd School of Law. She's won countless awards. And in 2012, Judge Cruz was elected to the Las Vegas Justice Court bench. So welcoming Chief Judge Cynthia Dustin Cruz, who is running for re-election. Judge Cruz, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me here. I know we ran into each other at something, and then I
Yes.
started bending your ear about a lot of the stuff that we're doing, and here I am today.
Well, I'm glad you did that because I found your story very fascinating and you have a wealth of experience. And certainly we're going to get to some local issues in your career, but I think I want to start out by asking you just some basic general questions because I don't know if you've ever had to deal with this in your career, but, threats on the DOJ, threats on our, justice system, threats on judges, members of their families. I mean, when you see things like this in general terms, what goes through your mind?
So I think that, it's a little bit saddened that we've kind of gotten into where, when you're behind the computer, you're behind a phone, due to the accessibility that we now have of a lot of our public officials, a lot of our public officers, it's made it really easy to kind of vent your spleen and express your angst. And I think everybody has kind of lost sight as to, one, how we ultimately got here to be the United States. And two, everybody's trying to do a job. Mm-hmm. And for example, my job as a judge is, here's these laws, here, whether they come from the legislature or whether they come from a higher court authority. And my job is to fairly and impartially apply those laws to the facts and matters that are coming before me. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's my job. That's what I've gotten elected to do. There may be something that I don't personally agree with, but it's not my role there.
Right.
And I think somehow, while people have been very passionate, I think somehow people have lost that piece of understanding. And it saddens me whenever I see the threats to members of the judiciary, somebody in law enforcement, somebody that's a mayor, city council, an elected official, because really that person is just, they're there for a reason. They're there to do a job. And while you may not agree with them, especially if they're an elected official, your power is at the ballot box.
Sure.
And I think that everybody is so wrapped up in things that I really think that there's a lot of people that have stopped and taking a second and stepping back. And I think that they've moved into, I'm going to express my angst by threats. And sometimes, unfortunately, people take it a little bit further.
Agree. And you've dedicated your life to this. So I haven't really heard this term until maybe the last 6 or 7 years. At least I didn't hear it to the extent I hear it now, which is two-tier justice system. When you hear that term, Judge Cruz, what goes through your mind?
So there's, everybody's kind of had this feeling, it's, depending on how much money you have is what you're going to get out, and how things are going to go. And it's always been a sad thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why, ultimately, I'll be honest, when I was going through school, I never thought that I would become an attorney, let alone a judge. And when I became a business person here in Las Vegas, and I started interacting with people, I started thinking, especially when the law school opened up, it's really easy to complain. It's really easy to be upset with things. And it's another thing to start moving forward into a position that you can help people. And so, I went to law school. I ended up, moving into the law, and now I've moved into being the bench. Maybe because I didn't come from the silver spoon in the mouth. I've never believed that just because you have a lot of money or you have a high-priced attorney that you're going to get any other type of disposition out of me. And I've always maintained that in my position on the bench. But I am very aware that there is a belief, and sometimes in certain circumstances, that there have been things that have moved behind the scenes that would cause people to have a lot of disbelief and a lot of angst as to that two-tiered justice system. It shouldn't exist.
It shouldn't. I agree with you, but you're saying it might. It could. Is that what I'm getting from you?
It could, and I think that's why, I can cycle back around. I think that's why it's really important for people to finally start looking at who you're, not only who are you electing on the top of the ticket, but you need to start looking at, down the ticket. And historically, a lot of people don't know about judges. They're afraid to figure out and learn about judges. You've got the road signs that you drive past. I have a road sign. I've got many road signs. You see social media posts, this person's out, but what's really the meat and potatoes of this person? Yes, as a judge, none of us are able to run on any form of platform or campaign promises. We can't do that. But, look at track records,
Right.
and look at what's kind of perpetuating along, and take the second to educate yourself, because I think that historically people have just gone with, oh, I think I recognize that name. I think I like that name. And you're not really kind of digging into a lot of the meat and potatoes that you might want to do.
Sure.
And you do run that risk sometimes of things like that happening.
Absolutely. Have you ever presided over a case where somebody, maybe the defendant, was going after a member of your family to the media, going after you personally, going after a member of your family, or any have you ever been in a situation like that in your career?
So, one, not saying please open the gates,
Right.
but I did have a situation where I had somebody that was in, I do an adult drug court, and we were working with that individual to try to help that individual. And not everybody is in the space to be ready to accept that help. And we always hold people accountable, because that's part of the get. When you're doing a treatment court, it's a carrot and the stick kind
Right.
of approach. And, I had somebody, and he unfortunately was a caregiver for his mom, but he was very heavily addicted. And to the point that he literally called himself, I'm a functioning meth addict. And, we kept trying to explain, you don't see, if you step back and you look from the outside, you don't see what we're seeing. You're telling me that you are trying to take care of somebody that does need probably a little bit more help, but yet this person is living in an environment that is not clean, not safe, and because you're out having moments of time that you're out getting high. And we kept working on interceding, providing treatment options, and unfortunately, ultimately, this person ended up where he got revoked, and he was put into jail. Unfortunately, during that time, even though I do know that social services and other agencies were working with the mom, she ended up passing away. And, you know, it was easy for him to put that short distance to say, but for me going to jail, my mom would be alive. And then, you know, who's the person that put me in jail? And instead of rolling it back around, the person who put me in jail was myself, and due to my actions, here's me and I'm the easy one.
He's
And
blaming you.
so we did have some points in time that person did reach out to me and kind of have some strongly worded things that caused some of the Marshal Service some angst. And
Was there a
some
gag
visits.
order, or did that?
So we don't do gag orders. I did
Yeah.
I did have to go into getting a temporary protection order against him. I didn't want to quite go to that, you know. And he did have law enforcement come knock on the door to say, "Hey, you got to stop."
Yeah.
And understanding some of those dynamics.
I just think that's serious, right? You're doing your job. People are going to agree. Some people are going to disagree with your decisions. I would imagine that would be an everyday occurrence, but it's your job to make plenty of important decisions. And when somebody attacks a judge, not physically, of course, I'm talking about verbally, either or would be horrible, but, you know, and goes after a member, and you know where I'm going at with this because we have some very big national cases going on where that has happened.
Yes.
I find it to be disgusting. And I'll just give up one example, not from, you know, a couple months ago, but from years ago. There was a judge that's Mexican descent, even though was born in this country, and it was presiding over one of Trump's cases. And Trump decided to go after him and said, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, that he couldn't do the case and couldn't preside over the case honestly because he's Mexican. There were a lot of people like yourself, a lot of judges across the country that were very disturbed by that statement, right? And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, because I was upset when I heard that.
You know, how far down the slippery slope do you want to go? I don't think the judge should preside over my case because they're female. I don't think the judge should preside over my case because they're male. I don't think they should preside over the case because they didn't go to this particular school or they did go to this particular school. Like, you know, there's nothing to suggest. If you want to suggest that a judge is not being fair and impartial, you know, we have by statute an actual mechanism to take advantage of. It's, again, circling back to what I earlier discussed, it's very easy to start utilizing a variety of platforms to complain and stir the pot.
Sure.
But, you know, are you really doing our system any benefit when you do that? And when you have somebody that can take things that it goes to a national level, you know, I think you start chipping away at the very foundations of what our country is about.
Couldn't agree with you more on that one. And I'm not asking you to speak about the cases specifically in regards to the January 6th defendants, and many of them, of course, were prosecuted, whether it be a plea deal. But, you know, again, we hear attacks from, you know, one side of the aisle, even the former president, calling some of those people that were convicted in a court of law, they had the opportunity to defend themselves, as patriots and hostages. And my response, and you tell me if you disagree, but my response is always, all these people had an opportunity to defend themselves in a court of law, innocent until proven guilty. Many of these people were found guilty, or there were plea deals involved. They all had attorneys. So why is it that there are still so many people on one side of the aisle, maybe not so many, but there are some, including our former president, attacks on our justice system, like we were just talking about. They're hostages. I've never heard any sitting politician use that term about somebody who was convicted in a court of law. That's the part that I don't understand. If you're not convicted, that's one thing. Then it's just hearsay, right? But if you're convicted by a jury of one's peers, then how could you still make that argument? That's what I don't understand.
So, you know, I don't want to quite jump into that pond, but I'll say this, you know, being a judge, and prior to being a judge, I used to be a criminal defense attorney. And I am challenged with thinking back with, you know, many of the people that I represented that were convicted through a variety of methods, be it that they entered into a plea negotiation, be it that they went to a full trial and were found guilty by way of a jury verdict or by way of a judicial, a bench trial. I don't think that there's that many that would sit there and run around and say, oh, I totally agree with that verdict. Just, most people that are accused of a crime, I mean, we start off and our principles are you are innocent until you're proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you are proven guilty, you still have an appellate process that cases can move up for additional review to make sure that if somebody is going to be convicted, that it was done fairly, following the laws, and done correctly.
And they've all had that right.
I don't know where the status is,
Okay.
for those particular, and I just want to talk
Gotcha.
about, in the criminal justice system.
Sure.
There are very few people that, going back well before I became a judge that I used to represent, that if they were found guilty, that they agreed with that decision.
Understood. Okay. In your career, have you ever been in a situation where a jury finds the defendant guilty, you sentence the individual, and then they're proven to be innocent based on DNA evidence months, years later? Have you ever been in, because that's been going on, especially with DNA evidence now, right? Because when you started, the technology wasn't where it is right now, right? Have you ever been in a spot like that? And if you were, how do you deal with that from a position of up here when you have to sentence somebody? And I know it's rare, right? And then you find out that they were not guilty based on new evidence that comes forward.
So, thankfully, knock on wood, I have not had that situation. I know people that work in a variety of innocence projects. I think we would all agree. People that are, innocent of a crime should not be found guilty of a crime, nor should they. And our system works very diligently on trying to do that. But, what used to be, the technology and the process many years ago, is completely different than what we have in today's
Sure.
world. And I remember when I used to be a defense attorney and I used to be doing juries, I used to tell juries, I'm like, okay, how many of you guys have watched Law and Order? I need you to understand, that there's not, these machines or these ways of evidence that get you the result that you're hearing on Law and Order. And, it would be great if it was, but, there's not that level of complexity and technology. And, because people watch TV and
Sure.
people watch the movies and I mean, there's a lot of things that are new nowadays that if you probably rolled back, 20, 30 years ago, is very different than
Sure.
it is nowadays. But that's why we have projects like the Innocence Project to go back and look at this technology and maybe look at cases where, something may have happened that caused somebody to be wrongfully convicted, where, the evidence in reflection and
Sure.
retesting shows that they really weren't.
And to no fault of a judge, but I still would imagine we're all human beings. And, you sentence somebody to life or 30 to 40 years for an atrocious crime that a jury says the defendant committed, and then you find out through DNA evidence that they're innocent. That's got to be very difficult, and I'm glad you haven't had to go through that. But I would imagine that's a very difficult, I would imagine if you're a good person, a decent person, that's difficult for a judge to go, man, even though it's not my fault, and we have new evidence now that's come out, that I would imagine most judges would still not take that lightly, right?
I can't speak for others, but I think that it would be concerning, to almost anybody on the judiciary.
Yeah, no question. All right, let's talk about juries for a moment. I think we both could agree that most jurors in this country do their due diligence. They're good people, and they do their job. However, as you know, all it takes is one juror to totally flip a case, right? Totally flip it from a guilty charge to a not guilty charge or a hung jury, you name it. I think back to the O.J. Simpson case. I know we don't need to get into specific cases, but the O.J. case, and I'm not talking about Las Vegas, the Jackie Glass. I'm talking about way back decades ago in L.A., where there was one specific black juror after the not guilty verdict was read that put up the fist and put up the Black Panther sign as he was walking out of the courtroom. And I think most people would say, okay, there was no chance that that guy was going to put a guilty verdict on O.J. Simpson. How often do you think that, it's a hard question for you to answer, but I would imagine that still happens in our justice system, where you have one person that could be on one juror that could already have preconceived notions. It's difficult, right? It's hard to weed out some of those people.
So, when you are picking a jury, when you're selecting a jury, it's not like, hey, come in and, put, a certain amount of people in the box and, okay, that's what we get. There's a lot of questioning. There's a lot of back and forth by not only the judicial officer, but by both of the attorneys. There's a lot of questioning. And you are trying to work on getting a jury that's going to listen and a jury that's going to apply the law as they are charged to do.
You ever had, I would imagine in your career, you've had some attorneys that you've had to hold contempt in court. Have you had that in your career?
I have not.
Really? That's good. Well, that's a good thing.
I have not. Maybe it's the style that I do try to do in my courtroom. And I will say, when I first got on the bench, it was challenging because I remember as a litigator, I disliked it when the judge was getting on the bench late. If I was on time for court, let us go. Like, if I had to go to another department, I made sure that they knew that I had to be in another department.
Right.
So, when I first got on the bench, I probably was, a little bit more sterner than I should be. And, chewing out attorneys where, hey, our entire calendar is held that I can't do anything because I don't have you sitting there, ready to go, to handle all these cases.
Sure.
And, or, we courtroom shared a lot of the judges for many years. And, you're like, I need you guys here because I need to get, I've got witnesses sitting here. I need people going forward, and I need to get this going because I'm going to lose my courtroom, and we've got to try to figure out, and people are sitting here waiting. And I think over time, as opposed to expressing my frustration with attorneys who were running late for whatever reason, traffic, stop off at Starbucks, stuck in another courtroom, I've probably eased a lot back and taken some personal reflection to realize, we're not robots.
Right.
And, try to keep my courtroom in a way that, pretty much everybody can, have their position. I have no problem with somebody being an advocate. And I have had people that, probably have gone a little bit further than they can be. And, I'm just going to stay where I need to be and not escalate the situation, because I don't think I need to get to that level. And I think you can manage what's going on in your courtroom well enough. That being said, to come back to the jury question, this is an interesting one, because I did have a case where I had a hung juror. And you have to come back to our constitutional principles that it is supposed to be every juror that finds you guilty. And that's an important thing, because when you're at proof beyond a reasonable doubt, that's what it means. I had one, and the one juror was definitely hung that jury because the allegation is that this person that was accused of committing this crime with a knife went running down the street with a knife in his hands, and she truly believed that, we're taught from being very young, you don't run with scissors. And so there's no way that, it could be this person running with a knife. And so it was just.
That's bizarre.
Well, I mean, I'm not kind of getting into the whole, factual things, but,
Right.
there were some of the issues, but that was her, when she heard the evidence and she saw the evidence and she listened to the testimony, that was where she was at. And so that juror felt that the state didn't meet their burden. That's what she felt. And that's what,
That's got to be very frustrating for the prosecution.
I was the defense attorney, so it was
Good for you.
not
but
so frustrating for
right,
me.
right.
But, that's our rule of law, right?
It is our rule of law, but with that being the case, and again, I don't know all the specifics in this case, but that's still got to be very frustrating to the family of the victim when you hear that there is one juror that is going to find someone not guilty because, well, I was taught growing up that you don't run with scissors, so he couldn't have been running with a knife. When I hear that sort of logic, I just shake my head. But then it goes back to what I said earlier. You're always going to have jurors once in a while that are going to react that way, and there's really nothing we can do about it. This is how our justice system works. Again, if you're just joining us, Chief Judge Cynthia Dustin Cruz, she's running for re-election, a wealth of knowledge as a judge. I want to ask you this. Let's talk a little bit about remorse, right? Maybe that word is overused in a courtroom. Is the defendant who is going to be sentenced really remorseful? And I find it interesting. I'm sure you can probably tell when someone means it and when they don't, right? Just by their demeanor in the courtroom, right? But I do find it interesting that when a defendant never apologizes. I'll give you an example from my own personal situation that I was in when I was very young. I'm 12 years old. My whole family was in a very serious car accident. Someone who was driving drunk. My grandmother sadly lost her life. My parents were in comas. And the guy who hit us, never once an apology to us, months and months down the road, never an apology. He killed my grandmother. Never an apology, never a letter, never any remorse. And then all of a sudden, when he's in a courtroom and he's speaking to a judge, then all of a sudden he decides to be remorseful. I think a lot of these people, for lack of a better term, are full of crap and they only care about themselves. Now, I believe there are a percentage of people that are extremely remorseful. We see it. I'm sure you see it in your courtroom where, geez, they're sad for what they did. They wish they could take it back. They're sorry to the families. And I'm sure you appreciate that. So I guess my question to you is, can you tell when someone's full of it and when they actually mean it? And how much do you take that into account during sentencing? And I know every case is different.
So, one, I'm truly sorry that you had to experience that and the loss
you.
in your family when you were younger. And two, I don't do felony sentencings.
Right.
So, but what I can say, and this is coming back to my years of being in practice and understanding a lot of some dynamics as to how evidence can be taken and how it can be utilized in a case like that. When you have, okay, if I'm a defense attorney and I have somebody, and I'm going to use kind of the factual basis lightly of what you talked about, and I'm representing a person that is accused of things like this. I may have my client saying, I'm devastated that I did this. I'm horrified. I want to apologize. And I'm going to say as a defense attorney, I need you to wait. Because if that defendant is writing a letter, an apology letter, and the case has not reached a resolution and it's still kind of moving through the justice system, that letter can be handed over to the prosecutor and it can be used for an admission of guilt. So there's a lot of factors that are hard for the general public to kind of wrap their head around. And I hear the angst with you, like he never apologized. He waited until sentencing. But sometimes you have to try to figure out and understand that that person may have been very remorseful from day one and horrified that their actions resulted in such a severe collateral consequence. But they may have been strongly advised by their attorney to not do that reach out because it would ultimately be used against them. And up until they actually had the sentencing, there was, it was ill-advised to move into that dynamic. And it places victims in a very similar circumstance that you are, because you're going to have a victim that's going to be kind of having that, carrying that trauma and that angst as to they're not doing this. And that carries also over into civil, because you're going to have the same thing. And when you're thinking about how statements can be utilized against either side, you can see why a lot of times attorneys are very frequently tell all of their clients, like, no, I don't want you talking about the case. And you know, it happens.
Sure.
It's an unfortunate thing, because I think it makes it challenging for people on both sides. Um, and then when it does happen, you know, you've got people on either side feeling like, wow, it took you this long. But
I think that's a natural human reaction, but you're also right. There's the legal side of it as well, where the defendant is probably listening to his attorneys, and they're probably telling him or her, "Don't reach out, don't do this." And I get that. I guess I'm talking more about, maybe the week after or something, have somebody reach out. But I also understand your perspective as a judge, and where you're coming from. If you're just joining us again, Chief Judge Cynthia Cruz, we will be opening up the phone lines after we take a break. The number to call, by the way, she's nice enough to be taking some calls, 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you'd like to call in, now is the time to do so, to ask Chief Judge Cruz questions. Any question you like, she may or may not be able to answer it. But 702-221-7283. Before we take a quick break, a fun question for you. What is your favorite court movie? I have to ask you that. You must have that one movie that you loved your whole life that's a court movie that involves a judge. And, like, do you have that one movie that's your go-to?
And it sounds so, it just sounds so quintessential. But i- if you're an attorney, you haven't watched My Cousin Vinny, like, you really have to.
That's a great one. Yeah.
And then, Legally Blonde is also,
Yep.
another one. And it's just because you can find the funny bits of humor, and how it really could float into, and especially now that I've been, not only an attorney for so long, but a judge, how I can really see that kind of navigating around.
Joe Pesci, that's an attorney that I would definitely hire any day of the week. That is such an awesome movie, by the way. It's such a great movie. I'm trying to remember the movie with Matthew McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson. That was a phenomenal movie. Just great acting in that movie. Great scenes in a courtroom. And I'm just drawing a damn blank, and I can't remember what the name of that movie is. What was that movie with Matthew McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson, where he kills a couple people who raped his daughter?
Right.
That such a powerful movie, and that's what really started his career off, with just such a great performance. There's a lot of great performances and a lot of great movies involving, the courtrooms and A Time to Kill. Yeah, that's a good one too. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. Phone lines are going to be open. Judge Cruz will be taking your calls at 702-221-7283 when we come back. We'll take a quick break, be back right after this. It's Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP. All right. All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. We got Chief Judge Cynthia Dustin Cruz in studio. You're welcome to ask her questions and call in. She may or may not be able to answer it based on no specific cases. You can't ask her about a specific case. Obviously, you can't taint a case, and so obviously she might not be able to answer those types of questions. But welcome to get your calls. I know the phone lines are full right now. Keep trying, and Judge Cruz is nice enough to be answering some of these questions. And let's go first to Ulrich. Ulrich is first up on PTL. Hi, Ulrich. You're on with Chief Judge Cruz. Go right ahead.
Hi, Brian. How you doing? Happy
Good.
Friday.
Happy Friday.
First of all, I want to make a small comment about Biden, what you said before.
Okay.
And then I have a question to the judge.
Okay.
I have seen the David Pakman show, and he invited an expert who pretended every election since decades. So there are 7 key facts or so, and the Democrats have now 4. So he is pretty sure that the Democrats will win the election if Biden
well, we'll see.
stays in.
We'll see about that,
Yeah.
but time will tell. So Ulrich, go ahead. What is your question for Chief Judge Cruz?
Okay. So I want to ask the judge how she sees that. I mean, the question was coming from you before. I think the majority of Americans think we have a 2-tier justice system. The rich can just buy the best lawyers and can delay, like Trump's case, can delay everything and appeal everything. They have the money, they are billionaires, and they can surround the system. The middle people, poor people who don't have the money, they are screwed because if I would do the crimes Trump did or prominent VIPs did, I would be in jail immediately.
All right. Well, we'll let the judge. And by the way, Ulrich, thank you. It's a good question, and we'll let the judge respond to that. Judge Cruz, what do you say to that?
So I can talk about in Clark County, and I can talk in Nevada, and I'm going to talk both in the criminal realm and I'm going to talk in the civil realm. So I will say, shout out to our Clark County Public Defender's Office. That they have some amazing people that work there that have law degrees from a variety of law schools that can be challenged to a lot of those high-priced lawyers. So one, I would say, if you are indigent and you do get somebody that is appointed to you from the Clark County Public Defender's Office or even the Special Public Defender's Office, those are people that if they were out in private practice, you would probably paying a very pretty penny for. So shout out to them. And I know that they work very, very hard and very diligently. And I know there's been a lot of belief that they're not attorneys or they're something lesser. No, I know many of them who actually went to law, that were public defenders that went to law school with me, same law school to Boyd, and other top tier law schools here. So that is a wonderful thing about our community here that I can speak out to. On the civil side of things, I think that's where that has been a challenge for many people. There are wonderful programs. I sit on the Nevada Supreme Court's Access to Justice Commission, and this is one of the very topics that we have a lot of concern about. And Barbara Buckley and her team over at Legal Aid of Southern Nevada have also fashioned an amazing team of not only attorneys that work for her at Legal Aid with years of litigation experience, but she works very diligently, as does the Supreme Court, to work on getting top tier attorneys to take pro bono cases where normally these attorneys bill out at 500 plus an hour and they will come and represent cases pro bono. So it's not a perfect fix, but I will say, and I love to advocate that here in Clark County, We have worked very diligently to have effective representation for
Sure.
people that are not within a lot of the means to have that, like I said, that we're not having that
Yeah.
two-tier justice system
And,
here.
and I'm with you on that. And there are some great attorneys that are doing pro bono work and very skilled attorneys. But I think, yeah, I think as a whole, a lot of people in this country feel like, at least some do, that if you're wealthy and you have a lot of money, a la an O.J. Simpson or a Bill Cosby or whoever, that doesn't mean you're going to be found innocent, but you have maybe a better chance than if you didn't have the means. But I think people are, like you said, are working very, very hard to get it more an even keel and fairness. And I think that's also very important to note. All right, let's get back to the calls. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Fernando. Hi, Fernando. You're next on with Judge Cruz. Go right ahead.
Hi, guys. Thank you, Judge Cruz, for your 10 years of service so far. I read your bio. Great credentials. I wanted to ask you.
Fernando, your Obama phone isn't sounding too good right now. Is he still there? You're cutting out, Fernando. Do we still have you, Fernando?
Hello?
Go ahead. Yeah, you were cutting out a little bit earlier. Go right ahead.
Oh, donating money to judges' campaign.
Fernando, I apologize, my friend. I'm sure you have a very good question, and we appreciate your compliments to Judge Cruz, but you're going to have to call back on a better line. Do we have landlines these days? I don't even know. I don't even know where our landlines went anymore.
I'm going to say it has nothing to do with the landlines. It has to do with the fact that it's like, we're melting on the sun here
That
in
is
Las
true.
Vegas.
That is true. It's like 120 degrees outside, man. It's killing me.
Hey, it was a balmy 110.
Yeah, it was.
It's a balmy 110 today.
Yes, it is. It is balmy. That's cool compared to what it was like a week ago. 702-221-7283. You're welcome to call back, Fernando, just on a better line. Let's go to Ben. Ben is next up on PTL. Hi, Ben. You're on with Judge Cruz.
Hi, I kind of got a two-part question for Judge Cruz here. First, as a judge, where do you stand, or do you feel personally slighted if one of your opinions that you write or a ruling that you make gets appealed and later, remanded or overturned?
Absolutely not. That is part of our justice system. And while I make every effort to apply the law appropriately, if I have a higher court telling me I got it wrong, I'm going to look at, the basis as to how the court told me I got it wrong and make sure that in my future rulings that I'm applying the precedent that they're giving me so that I can be a better jurist.
Gotcha. And then I guess the second part of my question, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the objections that you get is a lot of times to jury instructions, and that being a very relevant thing with the Trump trial. How do you feel in light of the Sixth Amendment and the Seventh Amendment and just how our jury trial system works that the instructions did not require a unanimous vote?
So when we're talking about jury instructions, I can unfortunately only apply Nevada law to help you out here. But what happens is frequently here you'll have usually what they call a set of stock instructions that are presented by the attorneys to the court. Then the attorneys usually offer up to the court what are called special instructions that deal more towards the particular facts of the case. And both parties, this is outside the presence of the jury, both parties explain and usually present the case law to the court to make their argument and their pitch as to why that special instruction should or should not be given. There's a lot of times, and I work very diligently with both sides on cases, that I advocate to them like, hey, sit down between the two of you, go over proposed jury instructions, work out what you're both in agreement on, and then let's spend the time, if you are not in agreement on something, to bring it before, at that point, me, and that we look at everything. I listen to the arguments, I look at the case law, and then I make my determination as to whether, based upon a variety of case law, it's an appropriate instruction to go to the jury. So all of these things are very case specific and they're case driven. I can only talk about what
Sure.
the process is in Nevada, but that is how jury instructions are resolved in my court and in a majority of the courts here in Nevada.
Two really good questions, Ben. Thank you very much for the phone call. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Vivian. Vivian is next up, calling out of New York. Vivian, hi, you're on with Chief Judge Cruz. Go right ahead.
Hi, Judge Cruz and Brian. I really have two things that I need some kind of information on. We all know that justice is supposed to be blind, but it doesn't seem to be working in that area of being blind. It seems to be biased in some ways. And I have a couple of people that I know are in law school that get a little discouraged because stuff is being overturned and things are not going the way they're being taught. How do you encourage someone to like hang in there and maybe things will change or something, because it's really hard on them?
I agree it can be frustrating. The law, okay. So our legal system is founded on something called precedent, and that is what we have very frequently talked about. And that's what, as law students, were learned as to, kind of how our case law has evolved. Statutes, are the ones that's the codification of many things. And, a lot of times everybody has to realize that, our law kind of goes along. My job as a judge is, here's what the law says. It's not, at my level, I'm a limited jurisdiction judge. I'm not, it's not for me to legislate from the bench. It's for me to follow what's going on. Higher levels and higher appellate courts are the ones that interpret laws. And really, it's what were the briefs that were coming in front of the courts. And the best thing that I can say is our judicial system is such that you always can have that, as this issue is moving through, that it can be challenged, because as our world evolves, as things change, we do have a process that it can be raised again to a higher court and challenged. And, sometimes certain rulings are overturned. Sometimes certain rulings are upheld. And, I've seen cases that have caused people angst that have gotten overturned. And I have seen cases that the other side has had angst, has gotten overturned. So I would say don't give up hope. That is what the legal system is all about. And if, we stayed true to going all the way back, we'd still be living with some laws that are fairly old and from England.
So I know we only have a few minutes left here. I don't even know if you can answer this question. I don't know if you have an opinion on it, and it has to do with our Supreme Court justices. Do you have any opinion, if at all, on Justice Alito in front of his house with a flag turned upside down, which I know you would never do? He blames it on his wife. And then, of course, well, let's start with that. Do you have any opinion on that at all?
That's, one, I can only talk about where my ethical obligations are.
You would never do that.
It is not something that I personally would do. But, can I comment or give an opinion on that? I think that would be stepping into, aside from the quagmire, it places into a very difficult position that I'm suddenly, as a lower court judge, starting to impose my views and my readings of ethical opinions on another member of the judiciary, which is not my role to do.
No, not your role. My opinion is it's ridiculous, and he blamed his wife for it, but that's my opinion. And of course, the stuff that Clarence Thomas is dealing with, were millions and millions of dollars. Some people claim it was bribes. Have you ever had anybody in your career approach you offer you something, whether it be money or a lavish trip, knowing that in a way that they're trying to bribe you? Have you ever had that in your career?
Nevada law requires that we disclose on a yearly basis any things that could be considered gifts
Right, right.
or anything that we are required to disclose that
Mm-hmm.
when it exceeds a certain dollar amount.
Sure,
So one, I've never had that,
which is good.
and I think I might
Yeah.
be like, asking what were the strings attached there.
Right,
And I
of
do
course.
know that also in the campaign land, we are required to disclose, and those are, sometimes
Which is
considered inclined contributions
which is
too.
the way it should be, Judge. And you said it yourself. Well, if somebody offers me something, what do they want in return? You're going to start asking questions. What is this for? And then you have to disclose it. Again, my criticism of Clarence Thomas, like many others, we're talking not thousands, millions of dollars. So I'll let people make their own decision on that one. All right, let's get back to the phone calls. We only got a couple more minutes left here. I believe we have Fernando back on, who's on a better landline. Fernando, go ahead.
Yeah, hey guys, thank you, Judge Cruz, for your service. And I was reading your bio. And do you think lawyers should be banned from donating money to judges' election campaigns?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Listen, in a perfect world, but I will say elections are, unfortunately, campaigns are very expensive, no matter whether you're running for judge or any other office. And it places everybody in a position that is one I don't like having to ask. I know attorneys don't like having judges ask. We don't like it, but unfortunately, we don't have a system that gets us out of this. And if they sat there and said, hey, you get this pot of money and however you spend it is however you spend it, and then you're not going to accept donations from anybody, in a perfect world, that's great. But I also will say my campaign disclosures are public record. So everybody can do that. And the nice thing is I, number one, if I am doing a phone call or stuff like that, it is after hours, it is on weekends, it's on my days off. It is not when I'm sitting in the courthouse, and it is definitely not when I'm sitting on the bench, and definitely not in a conversation about any case whatsoever. That would be
Right.
completely improper. In a perfect world, we would be in a different position. Our laws are that we elect our judiciary. That has come up to vote many times, and our community has said that they want to keep voting their judges in. And unfortunately, while I could wish for a better situation, I can say as chief judge of our court, I handle administrative matters of the court.
Sure.
So aside from the 2 treatment courts that I do, I'm not really having that I have cases that I'm presiding over that are in front of me. So at least I've got,
Right.
while I'm doing this campaign cycle, I am distanced, so I don't have people that are appearing in front of me and donating.
Understood. Fernando, thank you for the call. Good question. All right. Got to squeeze in a couple more calls here. Let's go, and number 702-221-7283. Let's go to Al. Al is next with Chief Judge Cruz. Go ahead, Al.
Brian, thanks for taking my call. I'll try to make it real quick. My favorite movie would be the Philadelphia Story.
Oh, that's a good one.
And the quote was, we don't live in a courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, it's very difficult. And with that said, I wanted to ask the judge, I talked to a lot of judges, I'm involved in the community, and many have said, we have a lot of laws that we can't even do our job because they're so liberal, and it's hard for us to protect the community. What law would the judge like to see change now that we're going into a legislative session? And for me, I've spoken to you about this. I think that this $1,200 limit law of people doing the smash and grab has to be repealed. And I understand that some people are starving for food, but there's food banks. We don't need to have a limit of $1,200.
No.
Somebody starving can go into a market and just steal $1,200 worth of groceries.
Yep, understood.
That's happening. So,
yep. Judge, what do you say to that, Judge?
So I actually think I know Al, that I've seen him at some events and I've talked to him. One, it's improper for me as a judge to talk or comment about, or for the court to take a position as to particular laws. That's outside of, that's what the legislature and that's their roles to do. What I can talk about is what I do. My job is to apply the laws, and every fact is different. I work also, trying to promote activities and do things in the community. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to start working on, you know, systemic changes so that maybe what's going on that's leading to that, maybe we start talking a little bit more downstream and finding better solutions so we don't
Right.
have to get to that situation,
Sure.
and having a community-wide change as to how we navigate through
Sure.
our current world today.
Absolutely. Well said. All right, let's take one more phone call, and then I got to get the judge out of here. She has other things to do. Let's go to Kava. Kava, you're up last here. What's on your mind, my friend? You're on with Judge Cruz.
Hi, Brian. How are you guys today?
Hey, good. What you got for us?
So I have a question for the lady.
Judge.
So this goes back to the judge. Sorry, my bad. So I would just like to ask, based on what Brian had said previously on emotion and guilt, I was wondering, what do you think of when the orange turd was sitting in court and his face was just completely blank?
I don't
Would
know if
you
she could
say
respond to that,
was-
but yeah, I think the question is, what do you make of Donald Trump when he was sitting there falling asleep in the courtroom? I think that's what Cobb is getting at. I don't know if you have a thought on that. I'm sure you've had plenty of people that have been trying to sleep in the courtroom, right? I mean,
You know, I can't comment on that, but when I used to be in litigation, one of the things that I know as an attorney that I would very frequently advise my clientele was,
Mhm.
you have to understand, especially when you're in front of a jury, that jurors can read into things very easily. And so while you want to make sure that it seems that you're interested as to what's going on because it involves you, you also need to make sure that your facial expressions are almost like a poker face, because the smallest thing can be misconstrued by a
right.
jury.
Right. Yeah, I think that's good advice. And it's interesting because even when someone is like sometimes sentenced to life, or you'll see a poker face. You see that a lot actually, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe that. But maybe they're told to do that. I don't know. I don't know. But it is somewhat interesting. So Judge Cruz, I want to give you an opportunity to give out your website. I know we didn't get to a lot of the local issues you wanted to get to, but maybe we can have you in again to do that. And that's probably my fault. But give out the information, why people should reelect you, and where people can go to donate to your campaign.
Sure. My website is www.cruz4judge, so CRUZ, the number 4, judge.com. Has a lot of information about me. I think one of the things that, if anything, today's talk has demonstrated is that experience matters, and you need to have judges that understand all areas of the law. I do have experience both before even getting on the bench and since being on the bench of presiding over every type of case that we do in Las Vegas Justice Court. We are a high volume court. I just was looking at statistics from last year before coming in. We had just under 225,000 new matters submitted into the court, and if I roll search warrants in, we're over 225,000 matters. So we are a very high volume court, and you need to have judges that have a very good foundation to be able to handle that volume that's moving through and handling it appropriately and applying the laws appropriately. If you're not having a good foundation and not having a good understanding and having that depth of experience, you do run the risk of possibly making an error in judgment that could affect somebody in a negative way. And our court is more than just criminal cases. I mean, we do evictions, we do small claims, we do the dreaded traffic ticket, we do protective orders, we do small claims less than 15,000. So the likelihood that you're going to appear, they say, either in our court or family court is very high in a variety of different ways. So those are some of the talking points that I would say. My website has, if you do the pull down, it does have a section if you do want to donate, that you can donate right there on the website, or we have a mailing address, a lot more information about what I've been doing, because like I've talked about with you outside of here and today, it's more than just sitting on the bench. It's getting out and educating the community about what we do and seeing how we can work with community stakeholders to improve things.
Absolutely. And the website again is cruiseforjudge.com. Please check it out. Judge Cruz, I do appreciate you taking the time and coming in. It's been a lot of fun. And maybe we could do it again sometime and we could talk more, a little bit more about some local issues. But I do appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you having
Thank
me
you.
on.
Appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this with some Friday gossip news. Yes, we're going to switch topics. You're listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP. All right, welcome back. It's Pushing the Limits on a Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. Very impressed with Chief Judge Cynthia Cruz. I appreciate her time in coming in. First time I've ever interviewed a judge, by the way. I've interviewed all sorts of people from porn stars to politicians, but I've never interviewed a judge before. So that I found that very enlightening, very intelligent lady, and I wish her luck in her reelection campaign. And I appreciate all the calls too. Really some excellent questions. I would say the overwhelming majority of my listeners are very intelligent people. Yes, we have a few kooks that call in from time to time, but I am very proud of my listenership. Yes, we don't have the Tucker Carlson crowd calling into this show. Really good questions, and I appreciate all of you very much. I would also ask all of you to please check out my fairly new website. It's been around for like 2 months now, pushingthelimits.live. Again, that's pushingthelimits.live. We are independently owned. We're selling merchandise on there and all sorts of other different things. And you can sign up for the newsletter for free. So the lovely lady joining us right now, she joins us every week. And of course, you know her from this show, but you also know her from Dr. Phil. She's also made multiple appearances on Jimmy Kimmel's show. The very beautiful and talented Nicole Mitchell joining us on the show. Nicole, it's good to see you as always. How are you?
It's good to see you, Brian. Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday. And before we get to any of the pop culture gossip of the day, I know you're on OnlyFans, so I obviously don't expect you to badmouth the woman who originally founded OnlyFans. However, I did want to ask you one question because she had said in an interview yesterday, the founder, that she's voting for Donald Trump because he's the ultimate alpha male. I'm just the messenger here. That's what she said. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm like devastated to hear this because if you call a sexual predator who insults people with disabilities, minorities, immigrants, like I don't see how that's a compliment. I don't see how any man should strive to be that way. And it just shows how complex humans can be, that they can create something so I think is awesome. OnlyFans is awesome. And also make terrible remarks.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. She
know.
called him a protector. She feels protected around him. And I said, calling Donald Trump a protector is like calling a child molester a great babysitter. I mean, it's like, I mean, I know that's kind of an extreme, but I don't know. I was just surprised to hear that because she's the founder of OnlyFans and you're on that. And I was just shocked to see that. But hey, I guess that's here nor there. We could talk about more pleasant things. Here's something, Michael Bloomberg is a guy that at times has taken a lot of flack. When he tried to become an elected official not that long ago. And, he's been called a lot of different names, an elitist for one. But what people don't realize about Michael Bloomberg is he is a very, very big philanthropist. And boy, do you have a story that I want you to talk about here about a very large sum of money that he has donated. Tell me about this.
Yes, I love finding stories of the uber wealthy doing good in the world because it's so common to shame and judge and blame rich people for a lot of problems, but there are a lot of rich people doing good things. So he donated, I think it was over $1 billion. Is that correct?
Yes, that's an enormous amount of money.
Enormous amount of money,
Yep.
right? To John Hopkins to help prevent and eliminate student debt for the majority of the students. And they say the average student graduates with about $120,000 in debt for their medical degree. And now with his donation, either students will graduate debt free or at the max $60,000 in debt. Like absolutely life changing. And he was saying how with all the medical issues and people dying earlier and younger, more complicated, we actually need more medical professionals. And this is his commitment and contribution to make sure we have enough and that they are not riddled with student loan debt.
Well, kudos to Michael Bloomberg. Amen, brother. I mean, what a great man for doing this. People can say what they want about his politics. What a wonderful person to be donating this amount of money. I mean, I'm looking at my page right now. I need a few more zeros. I think I've got like $180 in donations here in the first hour of the show. So,
yeah, it's just a few more. Hey, Bloomberg, if you're listening, we'll take, we'll take a small 6-figure donation.
Bloomberg, where are you? Where's your donations to the PTL radio show? What's going on here? But no, listen, I'm always appreciative when anybody donates. to any cause, quite frankly. And putting in $1 billion, which we know every dollar of this money is going to be spent the right way. He's not donating it to a political candidate. He's not donating it, to someone who's going to spend it on things that won't help society. But every dollar of this, it sounds like, will be helping individuals, whether that means getting out of debt, student loan debt, and helping very intelligent young people, becoming doctors. I think this is just such a wonderful story. And kudos to him. That's somebody that I would want to vote for, somebody that's a philanthropist and somebody that gives back. Mr. Bloomberg is definitely doing that. All right, so this is a really weird story, and I don't know how I feel about this. It involves Whoopi Goldberg. So Whoopi Goldberg actually played some clips from this show on The View after I interviewed Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I had a bone to pick with Whoopi Goldberg because she did an entire segment on The View about my interview, didn't mention my name, and didn't mention the name of the show. So I was very pissed off at that, even though I was very happy that they played my interview and they were talking about it. They didn't say my name once. So I don't know. I have a bone to pick with Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
I like you, Whoopi. I love your movies. You're very funny. But yeah, anyway, this is a strange one. We've learned that she has just spread the ashes of her mom at Walt Disney World. First of all, are you even legally allowed to do that on private property? I didn't even know you were allowed to do that.
So I first want to say, well, you always give credit where credit is due. It is just good, basic decency. If you're going to promote or utilize anyone's content, anyone's creation, anyone's anything, always give credit to the original person. I feel like
Yes,
this
thank you.
should be a basic understanding of today's day and age, social media, digital age. Like, always give credit where credit is due. It is
Right.
the fastest way to build bridges, and it is the fastest way to burn bridges if you don't. So for everyone who's listening, it's amazing the connections that can be made when you do give credit, and it's amazing what potential bridges are burned when you don't give credit. So I just want to double emphasize
Yes.
what you just shared with us,
Amen.
Brian.
Amen.
Yeah. So I read this story about Whoopi Goldberg sprinkling her mom's ashes in Disney. I think it's Disney World, Disneyland, and first, my reaction was, that's so special, because they have a lot of special memories of this place, and she wanted to honor her mother, which is really beautiful. But then it's also, I can see people being really upset and reacting. And she says, and I don't know if this is true or not, but she shares that after she did it, she felt so guilty. She actually told Disney about it. Like, I don't know if I did something dangerous, because she sprinkled some of the ashes in It's a Small World, the water.
What?
And I'm like, but I'm assuming It's a Small World water is absolutely nasty and filthy and gross, and some dust is not going to make any difference. But
It's
I do
weird.
think it's kind of cool that she reported it, and they,
Yeah.
they had a conversation. But it is a little bizarre. But I'm a little bit of a weirdo, and I thought it was kind of tender.
I don't know. I mean, if you were going to spread my ashes, I would say I wouldn't want to hear It's a Small World after all 24/7 every day for eternity. That would be kind of torture. But hey, to each their own.
Where would you want your ashes spread if you were cremated?
Oh boy. I
Do
could
you
make
want to be
I could
cremated?
make a horrible joke and say in your bedroom, but I would never make a joke like that. Gosh, no one's ever asked me that before.
I love that. I feel honored.
I don't know. I would think it would have to be somewhere outdoors. It probably wouldn't be in a casino, in a poker room. I don't want to be there for eternity.
I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit, just because you said that.
Maybe I would say spread me around a little bit. Put me. Yeah, spread me around a little bit. I think that I love sports. I love basketball. So maybe at the new arena where the Celtics are playing in, maybe put me on a beach somewhere in Malibu. I don't know, somewhere fun like that. Spread me around. I don't want to be in one place. Does that make sense?
Do you want to be cremated?
Probably not. I'm
Ooh,
dead. I don't know. I mean, people have differences of opinions on where you're going to be at, or if there's an afterlife, or I hope I'm wrong on this opinion, because it's a non-religious opinion, but I believe after you die, it's just like before you were born. You didn't exist. Now, I could be wrong on that, and I hope I am. But if I am wrong, then sprinkle me in some places that I'll enjoy.
I
So,
love that.
yeah. How about you? Where would you want to
Very
be?
Yeah, I want to be cremated, and I'm probably the same way. I love the ocean, so I'd
Mhm.
probably just say, like, throw me in the ocean and let me live in my happy place there. Perfect.
I was going to say the Playboy Mansion, but that wouldn't be very mature. So I would never say that. Actually, it doesn't even exist anymore. Yeah.
Take a little bit of my ashes and put them in some slutty spots. I'm totally
Yeah,
available
yeah.
for that.
The Playboy Mansion doesn't even exist anymore, sadly. Yeah, maybe that's Pauly Shore's fault. I don't know, but yeah, it doesn't even exist anymore. But yeah, it is illegal, as far as I know. If you're on private property, you cannot spread ashes on private property unless you have the okay from the people that are running it. Like, you can't just go like in a casino and say, "Boy, my husband loved the casino, so I'm just going to put his ashes right here on this slot machine." No, you can't do that. Obviously, it breaks a lot of health code, and it's kind of nasty. And now putting ashes in the ocean, or a public area like that, if you do it in a safe manner, I think that's okay. But you can't do that on private property. That's my understanding. So I'm glad Whoopi Goldberg came to her senses a little bit. But I'm wondering what she was thinking when she's like, "Hey, I've got my dead mother's ashes here. I got all these little kids around. I'm just going to spread her ashes in this water." Yeah, not cool. You can't really
I
do
think
that.
we do weird things when we're grieving, and then
Yes.
later I feel like we
Yes.
come back around and see things a
Yeah.
little bit differently.
Like me talking to God. That's not something I normally do on a regular basis. So yes, I do agree with you. We do different things out of our element, perhaps, when we are grieving. So I don't think what she did was criminal, or I don't think what she did was this horrible thing. Just maybe a lapse of judgment there. But I am glad that she rectified that with Disney. And then when I go to that, when I go there, I'm going to be thinking about Whoopi Goldberg's
Yes,
mother and
you
wondering if,
are.
so I will be doing that. So this is a real weird story because I've met Will Ferrell before. Hilarious guy. I've met him at basketball games in Vegas. He's very affable. He's very funny, and he'll take pictures with fans. He'll talk to you. He's just a really, really cool dude. And I met him at a Laker game, and I just, listen, I'm not trying to bother the guy, but I just shook his hand and said, "Thank you for what you do." And he was like, he was really cool about it. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I just think he's hilarious, right? One of my favorite movies is Step Brothers. I mean, he's got so many great movies. So now we're learning a man that I also met at the Mob Museum here years ago when he was alive. I think he had since passed away, James Caan. I thought he had passed away. His son's kind of a jerk from Entourage, but James Caan, obviously a legend. And we're learning that when they were on the set making a movie together, that James Caan told him that he was not funny. What the hell is this? This is a weird story.
Crazy. And it was for the movie Elf. It's like the most ridiculously funny movie ever. And the whole time they worked together, he kept telling Will, "You are not funny. You are not funny. This is," and so Will said in the filming of that movie, is it James, you said? Because
James
when
Caan,
James was acting, he said he wasn't acting. He was truly annoyed with Will. And like that was him taking it out on Will the entire movie. And Will said he was terrified because I didn't realize this was his first movie after he left SNL. So he goes, "If I bomb this, I may never have a career again. If I nail this, it could blow me up." So he felt all this pressure. So he went in going, "I'm going all the way in, over the top. Like I'm fully committing to this role." James could not stand it. Then they go to the premiering of it. And when they're walking out from the premiere, after watching it, James turns to Will and goes, "You nailed it. Now I see how that was perfect all along." But can you imagine being in Will's shoes and having the main person you're acting across thinking you're absolutely dumb, can't stand you, and you still have to act like you're having fun?
That's got to be
so
terrifying for a very young Will Ferrell, who was great on SNL, but he wasn't really established as a movie guy. That had to be stressful. All I can tell you is that I met James Caan and I interviewed him when the Mob Museum had just opened up here. And I was able to get about 10 or 15 minutes with him, which, this is one of the most iconic actors in the history of film. Let's be honest. That's who James Caan is. Iconic actor. And I remember sitting with him, and he loved it when I talked about his son, who, by the way, is an a-hole. I've met his son before. Not a nice guy. But his eyes, went large, and he loved talking about his son. And then I said, "Well, is it an honor for you to be here?" It turns out he was paid a lot of money to be there for the Mob Museum opening here. And he looks at me and he goes, "This isn't an honor at all. I'm here because this is my job to be here." And I'm like, wow, what a great spokesperson you are. God knows how much money they paid you to be here. And you couldn't say something nice about the Mob Museum. And he basically said, "I'm just being paid to be here. Otherwise I would never be in this piece of crap place." That was that was my impression. I have a picture from that interview. I don't know where that interview is, but I came away from that interview saying, what what a nasty old man. That was like when
Oh,
I met him, and that was back in the days too, where they had the movie film festivals here. Um, I met the legend. I believe he is still alive, Robert Duvall. He could not have been nicer. Just to be able to meet him was such a incredible experience, and I met a lot of wonderful people during that time, legends in the film industry. But yeah, James Caan was not somebody that I walked away from it saying, wow, what a really nice guy. What a great guy. But when I met Will Ferrell, I was just like even a bigger fan. He's just such a cool
aw,
guy, and he's so funny,
I
Um,
love that. And I know
yeah.
you've met a ton of people. So my question is there someone who comes to mind who's like your absolute favorite that you've met over the years, or in the top 5 favorites? That's like instantly you can think of them, or do you have so many you can't even
Like
really pick
somebody
one?
that I did more than like a handshake with, like somebody that I actually got to know.
Yeah, that is hard because when you meet someone for 5
I mean, I
seconds,
shook
but
Barack Obama. I mean, I met Barack Obama very briefly the other day. Sort of, I guess. I was 2 feet away from him. I have shook his hand before, but I didn't really get a chance to know him personally. Of course, I wish I could have. Um, I don't know. As far as just people that I've met that I've said, wow, what a Shannon Elizabeth from American Pie just came in studio. I had met her before, but she came in studio and did an interview with me last week, and I'm just amazed at her generosity and what a wonderful person she is. I went to her charity event, a charity saving animals, and she has just dedicated her entire life and put her movie career to the side for this charitable foundation that she started. And I have so much respect for her and her husband. Really is incredible. Getting to know Vivica A. Fox. We go to basketball games together. I cannot believe how kind she is, and I'm mesmerized. It could be a complete stranger how nice she is with the fans and just with people in general, because I get a sense of what that would be like. There are people going up to her everywhere. We're at the game, we're at dinner. It doesn't matter. We're walking to our car. There are people going up to her, asking her for a picture, for an autograph, and she's so nice with everybody. And I'm mesmerized by her generosity. I'm probably missing a lot of people.
yeah, I know you've met so many. It's
Um,
just
a, a,
curious.
a musician that I talked to, and we've become good friends actually. And I'm going to be hanging out with him next month because his band is coming to town playing Brooklyn Bowl. I became a huge fan of the band Filter when I was like 12 years old. They've always been one of my favorite bands of all time. And it turned out that Richard was watching my show, and we kind of got to know each other a few years back. And we agree politically on a lot of things, but he's just such a good dude. Like we talked for like an hour and a half on the phone the other day. And it's pretty cool getting to know him. Now, there is the flip side of that, Nicole. I know I've given you a long answer here, but I do meet people that I'm very disappointed in as well.
Yeah.
I do meet people that are kind of jerks, meet people that I look up to, and then I meet them and they turn out to be complete a-holes. I mean, that happens too, right? We're all human beings. There's good people. There's not so much good people. But I would say there's no better feeling in the world that when you're a fan of somebody growing up and you live with their movies or their music, and then you actually get to know them, and it turns out they're just awesome people, and maybe you become friends with them. It's just so cool. And I never take that for granted. But you are right. I do meet a lot of people. I've met a lot of people just in the last couple of weeks.
Lots.
But yeah, Shannon Elizabeth, it just comes to mind because I just spent some time with her at her charity event and in studio, and she is such a wonderful human being.
Mhm.
She is so cool. She's such a nice person. And, I'd love to meet Michael Bloomberg, and I'd love to shake his hand and thank him for what he's just done.
Yeah.
People that give back, it's really, really a cool thing. Before I let you go, is there anybody that you've never met that you've always wanted to meet, Nicole, that you grew up with, that you've always, a celebrity that you've always wanted to meet?
Yes, Oprah.
Interesting. Oprah Winfrey.
Oh,
I wish she would run for president.
oh,
I wish she would run for president right now. I think
she
she would
should
win.
definitely be the mom of our country. I
Yeah.
definitely agree with that.
Very
She's
successful, very intelligent woman. What a
yes,
career that she's had, and a name that she's made for herself. Yeah, she's
yes.
super, super cool. And boy,
Have you met her yet?
No, I've never met Oprah. She
You and I
sticks
both
around her
need to meet
studio.
her.
I would love to. I have met Whoopi Goldberg. I did a red carpet with her, a charity event. I've never met Oprah Winfrey. You know, it's different, right? You can interview people, you can interview somebody on the red carpet, and then when you actually meet somebody and
Totally.
get to talk to somebody, that's even cooler. Away from a radio show, those are the moments that are definitely special to me. Well, Nicole, I did meet you because I do a radio show, so I do appreciate that.
Yes. Ah, I love
I
that.
hope you have a wonderful weekend. It is Friday. You got anything going on?
Yes, I have actually one of my one-on-one coaching clients flew in and I'm giving her a VIP experience while she's here in California. And I'm really, really excited about that.
That is super, super cool. I can't wait to hear how that goes. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, Nicole.
You too,
And if
Ryan.
I ever get Oprah Winfrey's number, I will pass it along. Okay.
Okay, deal. And same. If I get her number, I'll pass it on to you. I
Thank you.
love
I
it.
appreciate that. If you can find Jessica Alba's number, give me that one too. Okay.
On it.
Yeah, all right.
On it.
Fair enough. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Nicole. Always good to hear from you. You have a great weekend.
Bye,
Okay.
Brian. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Nicole Mitchell, everybody. Always a pleasure having her on. I don't think anybody's ever asked me where I want my ashes to be spread. I hope I'm not asked that question anytime soon. But that's a weird Whoopi Goldberg story. I guess I'll just leave it at that. Listen, I've told you guys this before, and I'll say it again. We are an independently owned network here with PTL pushing the limits. So we rely on people like you to help support what we do. How do you do that? Well, you can start. It's free. Check out the website. That website. Check it out. Pushing.live. You can sign up free for the newsletter. If you want to support what I do, go to the merchandise page. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. Don't be a right-wing buffoon is a very popular shirt on there. Also, if you don't want to buy any merchandise, you can donate. There's a donate button there as well, and we appreciate your support in what we do. Of course, at PTL Radio Show on YouTube. I'm on X. I'm everywhere, and I try to be as affable as I can and try to respond to as many people as I can. I also appreciate Judge Cynthia Cruz coming in. That was a lot of fun having her in studio. I really appreciated her time in doing so. What am I doing this weekend? Well, I'm excited for NBA Summer League. Today's day one. I get to see Bronny James on the court. Every weekend, it's another adventure for me, folks. You know me. I'm not the kind of guy that sits down. And I'm looking forward to a date with a lovely lady that I know on Saturday night. So that'll be a lot of fun. Supposed to go to a concert later that night as well. And Sunday's usually my day to kind of hang out at the pool because, you know, I'm not pasty white at all, you know, as you can tell. But Sunday's like a pool day for me to just kind of relax, unwind, sleep in. So that's how my weekend is going to go. Date with a lovely lady. We're going to see a concert. Today I'm going to enjoy a little bit of NBA Summer League and watch Bronny James. I'm sure, well, his father won't be there because he's training for the Olympics. But anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. We will see you Monday live, same time, same place. Have a great day, everybody.